Trying to save the fuel budget. And we got sports coats. Yeah, seems good. Okay. Call the meeting to order.
Roll call for the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 15th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Mr. Nelson, Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon.
Please stand for a moment of silence. Let's offer pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes from the City Council meeting of February 1st, 2023, and bills for payment on February 17th and 24th, 2023. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson.
All right, tonight our first presentation is the swearing in of our newest City Council member, Susanna Faulkner. Well, would you please come to the stage with the person swearing you in?
I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of this Commonwealth. And the Constitution of this Commonwealth. And that I will discharge the duties of my office as Erie City Council member with fidelity. And that I will discharge the duties of my office. And that I will discharge the duties of my office as Erie City Council member. As Erie City Council member with fidelity. With fidelity.
A resolution appointing Susanna Faulkner to serve on City Council, replacing Liz Allen, who resigned. Ms. Faulkner's term will run from February 15th, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Voting on the resolution, Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson.
Congratulations. Welcome, Susanna. Our next presentation will be to the family of Darnell Stallworth, Jr. in his honor. Jasmine will read.
A resolution by the Council of the City of Erie that whereas the City Council of the City of Erie wishes to pay special tribute to the late Darnell Malik Nathaniel Stallworth Jr. in recognition of Black History Month, with this year's theme being resistance, and whereas Darnell was born on September 4th, 1970 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to parents Gwendolyn V. Conway Williams and Darnell Stallworth, but found his home and community in Erie and spent most of his life here. And whereas Darnell had a passion for political activism and politics, where with SEIU Healthcare, he was a founding member of Erie County United. Darnell was a community organizer with Keystone Progress, where he was a founder of the Green New Deal Coalition. He also was a youth violence counselor with MATV. Darnell was the first chair of the Erie Black Caucus. He has a long history with the Sisters of St. Joseph in their neighborhood efforts, being a neighborhood coordinator. Darnell exemplified Black resistance by fighting for justice for the most marginalized and oppressed here in our city and beyond politics, especially those who didn't have a seat at the decision-making tables. So, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that this commendment is hereby presented to the family to honor Darnell Nathaniel Starworth Jr., and we extend to them our gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Moving forward with the agenda.
Is there anyone here to speak on a repository sale? Anyone here to speak on a repository sale? Anyone here to speak on a repository sale? Okay, that would take us to public comments.
Public comments, I would like to ask the public to clearly state your name and address for the record, and you will have 5 minutes.
My name is Freda Tepper, 1738 West 23rd Street, Erie, PA. I wish I didn't have to read my address. Other functions, places don't make me read my address. I'm concerned about there's an item on the agenda for $1,368,000 for gun violence investigation. I think that was something to do with gun casings. I sure would like to see the city make sure that they have in place the technology to do ticketing of people so they don't have to do any contextual traffic stops. Those are the traffic stops that are done for really minor infractions that have in other places resulted in police killing people. So I would like to see the city spend some of that money on having the technology in place to take pictures of license plates and mail tickets to people, and to actually address the underlying causes of gun violence rather than just investigating gun casing. Just want to remind the city of some things. We need a traffic mitigation ordinance. We have projects. We should have had a traffic mitigation ordinance in place before the IRG project, which is going to bring hundreds of trucks into the city. We don't have a traffic mitigation ordinance. We should have one that would address how it affects movement of vehicles, that it might be able to help us install more traffic lights or improve street crossings or control movement of traffic. We don't have a traffic mitigation ordinance. We need to require commercial and other non-residential property owners to maintain their sidewalks. And most notably, I've noticed the sidewalks on East 18th Street from about where it turns from Buffalo Road onto the west. And there are innumerable commercial properties that have very poorly maintained sidewalks. Some of them are impassable. And there's also same on West 18th Street between Cranberry and Raspberry and most of Raspberry. We are very quick to cite homeowners with quality of life ordinances for relatively minor infractions and possibly put a lien on their property. We need to start enforcing on commercial property owners so they maintain their sidewalks. As we've seen from the bicycle debacle, there needs to be better coordination with the public on projects. 5 years ago, I asked for public involvement. Nobody on the north side of West 26th Street got letters notifying them of the meeting on Green Garden. Only the rich people who live on the south side of Green Garden got letters. The people on the north side will also have their ability to get in and out of their driveways impacted by the project. The city needs to have an ordinance to address sidewalk closures. Thank goodness, after probably a year and a half, you can walk the entire sidewalk on 10th Street from Sassafras to the west and from 10th Street to 9th Street, because the Catholic Church and Cathedral Prep have finally evacuated the sidewalk. They and Erie Insurance and all the other businesses that close the sidewalk without providing alternative pedestrian access should never have been allowed to do that. I understand the city's working on an ordinance, but they're still working on it. When is there going to be this ordinance? It's really needed. Yeah, that's about it for tonight. I do want to say I was in the caucus, and I heard somebody say, we need to set an intention about that. And I thought, who the heck was that? I've never heard anybody in this room talk like that before. So I'm really looking forward to the infusion of new blood on the council and to see how it works out. Best of luck to you, Ms. Faulkner.
Thank you, Freda.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dominic Bazanco. I live at 3610 Harvard Road. I've lived there since 1995. The rest of the year, the rest of the time I've been a City of Erie resident. As long as I have 5 minutes, I'd just like to take a moment to say that because I do live 4 blocks off the Green Garden neighborhood and I travel Green Garden nearly every day, I would like to speak out that I am against any kind of bike path added into that neighborhood. But my primary concern here is something I read in the newspaper, excuse me, by Ed Palatella, concerning the pet project known as the Kakwa Road Bridge. First and foremost, I'd like you to get all out of your head that that was ever a bridge in any way, shape, or form. It's just a nice button word to draw some money from people. A couple days ago, I went down there, and I went from east to west abutments center line. I zeroed out my odometer, it came out to about 7/10 of a mile in distance for a 60-foot approximate span to be rerouted. If you think 7/10 of a mile might be too long, you could picture it 7/10 of a mile on West 12th Street and how many stop signs and stoplights you have to go through to do that 7/10 of a mile. It adds into a bit of time, you would think. It's only 3 stop signs to go around that ravine. Very easy to travel in a neighborhood that doesn't get any more traffic than actually belongs there. Nobody's using it as a shortcut to any place. Nobody's using it as a path to get around any other area. Now, I saw in this article that council approved nearly $600,000 in engineering designs for replacement. And I just want to know, has that money been spent? You don't have an answer?
I don't know.
Okay. Because my 53 years, nearly 36 of them has been in heavy construction.
Right.
And I can tell you that to replace a bridge that doesn't need to be replaced in the first place, in my opinion, for the amount of distance that is, you're going to spend more in engineering design than you will in actual construction costs. I've primarily built bridges in nearly my entire career. I do not think that that is something that the city should tackle, considering that if that amount of money is true, nearly $600,000, I'd like to remind you all that you passed a fee increase on everything that we've got, water, sewer, and you actually added on another fee to tax our raindrops. And I'd like to say $600,000 could go into paving the streets, repairing the sewer lines, all that stuff, reducing costs someplace else and spending that money on maybe even debt than a bridge that goes nowhere for a little pet project. It also says in the article that our mayor intends to rob Erie County residents of the $5 per registration fee on vehicles. And I, as a city resident, I can't justify money being taken from Albion and Waterford and Union City and Corey to pay for a little tiny 60-foot proximate span to cross a little ravine that only takes 3 stop signs to avoid. I think it's a waste of our money, and I hope that you're not too far in with this expenditure that you can't get out of it. That's all I'd like to say is I am 100% against replacing that bridge with any of the city or county funding. And as a person that builds bridges for a living, that should be telling you a lot. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Congratulations, Councilwoman Faulkner. Today I want to discuss, no closer, of course. Today I want to discuss Erie's child poverty problem. Of course, sorry. Allison, I live on 4149 McClelland Avenue. 4149 McClelland Avenue? Yes. Today I want to discuss Erie's child poverty problem and present a solution that the city could act on to diminish our 44% child poverty rate. Just last night, I listened to a wonderful woman tell me her story about raising a family in poverty. She told me how SNAP benefits, the child tax credit, and family support were vital in helping them raise their children. But many families don't have the support that they had. Erie has a unique opportunity to support families like them. A total of $52.4 million was provided to Erie County as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA. But most, if not all of this money has not yet been spent. But we have the unique opportunity to use these funds on a program that has been proven to reduce poverty in recovering cities just like ours. You see, ARPA has a provision that allows these funds to be used to resolve the negative economic impact of the pandemic on local businesses and families. I suggest we use ARPA funds to release a pilot program that provides $400 per month to 300 families in poverty, totaling $120,000 and taking up not even 0.25% of the total ARPA funds provided to Erie County. That is a pilot program, a trial run, for universal basic income provided to communities experiencing poverty in Erie. Before we discuss the benefits of universal basic income, also known as UBI, I want to get rid of a few preconceptions you may have with this type of program. Because this program would be funded by ARPA, it wouldn't increase taxes in Erie or take from any existing budgeted city funds, including the police budget. Additionally, this program would not reduce the incentive for those in poverty to work, because this pilot program would provide the equivalent of $2.31 per hour, working 40 hours per week, meaning it wouldn't be enough to sustain someone in poverty on its own. Again, this pilot UBI program would provide $400 per month to 300 families in Erie. It simply provides us the opportunity to discover what works and what doesn't with UBI policies and how our city could later build upon those discoveries to continue to invest in our community. UBI has numerous benefits, many of which are in dire need for our community. Programs similar to UBI have been proven to reduce gun violence. In many cases, poverty is the underlying cause of gun violence, making it impossible to effectively reduce gun violence without first addressing poverty. In fact, the CDC declared that Erie's community risk of gun violence is increased 5 times over due to the 44% child poverty rate. With the implementation of a UBI program, we would not only see a decrease in community violence as a whole, but also fewer incarcerated children in juvenile detention. Poverty also disproportionately affects communities of color. Addressing poverty through a program such as UBI would also help diminish the racial wealth gap in Erie. Additionally, the pilot programs such as this one have been proven to help residents secure permanent housing, move from part-time to full-time employment, and greatly reduce anxiety and depression. More children would also graduate high school, since children who spend at least half their childhoods in poverty have a high school graduation rate of only 62%, compared to the 90% of children who have never experienced poverty. It would also provide an incentive for some of the hardest working people in Erie to stay in Erie. I know Renee mentioned at the last budget meeting that many of the city's revenue troubles stemmed from people moving out to neighboring cities. With more people staying in Erie and more children provided with more opportunities to grow and learn, Erie is guaranteed to see an increase in revenue with the maintenance of a UBI program that invests in community need. For many families in poverty, UBI is a need, not a want. They need UBI to survive, especially once the extra SNAP benefits provided by pandemic initiatives disappear at the end of February. These changes to SNAP benefits mean that UBI will soon be in dire need for our community, but I'd like to give a word of caution. Because UBI is considered income when applying for benefits such as SNAP, we need to be cautious that the provision of UBI to families in need doesn't disqualify them from benefits of greater value. Regardless, we owe it to them to try a program that not only has proven benefits for our community, but also that Erie can afford by using pandemic relief funds provided to the county. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Schember, President Nelson, and members of City Council and the community. My name is Jeff Gross, and I reside in Northeast Borough at 5 Smedley Street. I work for the Commonwealth Department of Labor and Industry as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and I serve zip codes 16501, the poorest zip code in the United States, and 16503, the east side of Erie. I work with people who cope with disabilities to help them find employment, in addition to overcoming the socioeconomic challenges of these two zip codes, which are well known. I've been fortunate to live around the world from Pakistan to Peru, where I have witnessed third world poverty firsthand. I've even witnessed it in the state of West Virginia, where I grew up, before moving to Erie in 2010 for a career. I love Erie, and I plan to finish out my career here. My comments tonight focus on a proposed and urgently needed pilot project for a universal basic income program to study poverty in Erie County. I can confidently say, as many authorities around the world acknowledge, that the United States is an underdeveloped nation. Environmental factors which actually prevent crime include higher wages, guaranteed health care, food security, high quality and accessible child care, stable housing, well-funded public schools, and addiction recovery treatment. Major metropolitan areas near Erie make an effort to study the causes and consequences of poverty, including Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Jamestown, New York. The nation of Canada, a mere 24 miles north of Erie, currently operates a universal basic income program. It is germane to note that the state of Alaska issues monies to state residents every year as a result of oil drilling profits from multinational petrochemical corporations. Universal basic income projects are a mainstream, meaningful, and necessary tool to study the causes of poverty so that all people in Erie County can thrive. All of the investments in Erie County's infrastructure, including the high-profile projects of downtown revitalization and the Bayfront Parkway, will crumble to dust unless the tax base exists in the future to provide maintenance even as minimal as the timely filling of potholes. Just yesterday, the Erie Times News reported on a silver tsunami of our county's aging population, using statistics from the most recent federal census. The current median age of a county resident is 40.6 years, the highest it has ever been. People aged 65 and older currently account for 19.1% of all county residents. The demand for healthcare services will increase even as the number of workers available to provide those services decreases. I implore you, Mayor Schember and Council President Nelson, to introduce and support legislation authorizing $2 million in funding for the organization, implementation, and follow-up study of the consequences of a universal basic income pilot project in Erie County. Without a plan for the future, our tax base will continue to diminish, and all the downtown development and proposed bayfront redesign will surely crumble to dust without the resources to maintain our county's infrastructure. Thank you.
Hello, Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, Erie, PA. Honored councilman, our newest council lady, administration, Mayor Joe Schember. A couple of ideas I want to share with you this evening. First, on a UBI, if you recall, I've talked in front of this group several times, if not many, about instituting a pilot UBI project. Recently, I should have known, but recently I found out that Chicago has such a program for 5,000 residents of Chicago. It's a $32 million project. They're a big city, but a lot of cities are getting involved in this as a way to try to mitigate and certainly test what can be done with different programs. And I encourage you to consider this program. I talked in front of the DEI Commission a little bit earlier, and it had to do with the findings I had attending Dr. Louie's conversation. He's an economist from Penn State Barron, up at the Jefferson Society, and I asked him this question. I said, what have we lost? Erie County, Pennsylvania as a society, what have we lost? What's the cost of opportunity we've lost of not investing, of not getting the production out of the disadvantaged and disinvested communities? He says, an excellent question. He says the San Francisco Fed and the St. Louis Fed have done reports. I'm going to email them to Mr. President. But what they basically tell us is the last 30 years, we've lost $70 trillion in GDP because we've not invested in our most disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods. 70 trillion. If you're looking for an economic development plan, I think we have it there because one of the feds said if we look forward 30 years, we can gain over $26 trillion in GDP by investing in those neighborhoods, those communities. I think there's a theme in what I'm hearing from people talking about this evening. Invest in people. Get people hope and opportunity. Get them moving. Give them something that they can be proud of and get them to be productive. And so I suggest that those are the kind of programs that we need to look at. And again, the full report from the San Francisco Fed and the St. Louis Fed, I'll get them to Mr. President and he can disseminate them, but please consider it. Something that we haven't talked about. It's in economics and in other fields, we talk about an opportunity cost. Well, the opportunity cost of having productive individuals, in particular in those areas that have been disadvantaged and that we have not invested in, we lose. What we're talking about mainly is investing in areas that have prosperity. That's wonderful, and I think that will help. But if we really want to ignite a fire, you invest in those areas that sorely need it and systemically have not been invested in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dorier Page, 1031 East 9th Street, 16503. I'm here to basically piggyback off what everybody else said about the UBI and why it's important. Me coming from a major city, I was born in Detroit. I came to Erie later on in my life, but over the past 10 years, it's been my home. So I feel like the UBI is important because usually when these big cities that we talked about and we just named, those are the worst cities that we got in the country. And they did it at the last minute. So to prevent Erie from becoming one of those cities, we need to enforce that or try to get that done as soon as possible, because we don't want to be the last on the list but the worst out the bunch, if that makes sense. Because the later and the longer we catch on to the UBI and getting the $400 a month to the poverty-stricken communities for a year, we'll have more gun violence. We can't police poverty. We only can incarcerate poverty. We only can lock them up. We can only not influence them, but diminish their spirits. You know, we don't got recreation centers like we should. We noticed that in these larger cities, they had recreation centers and middle schools, and just a lot of different opportunities for different races in different neighborhoods. And then they just crash, like my city, Detroit. But it's on the come up, but it took like almost 15 years for that come up. Why wait for Erie when we have the opportunity and we got the people speaking about it right now in this moment, fighting for this cause that could potentially save us in the next 20 or 30 years when the money is available? Instead of worrying about bungee cords on Bayfront, we can try to fix up a local entrepreneur or nonprofit to help the community to prevent the gun violence. Because UBI is important. 44% child rate in Erie is poor. The highest being 48 in Syracuse. That's crazy. It's a lot of retired people. It's a lot of money in Erie. It's a lot of billions of dollars in Erie. Me, myself, I work at the Erie City Mission, so I know that it's a lot of help for adults. It's a lot of outreach centers. It's a lot of mental situations, a lot of mental help, a lot of housing authority situations, a lot of medication, a lot of resources for the adults. But I see that me being in the community, living in 16503, the top 10 poorest zip codes in the whole country, I see that the kids don't got that. The youth don't got that. And with the parents working so much, we're gonna pause that right there and go to the UBI being important. The reason why the kids are out there, because the parents gotta work extra time, work at extra 2 and 3 jobs. So at least funding that parent and one child can help, help the whole outcome of the household and the community. And with the children being outside, only thing they can do is get in trouble. We don't want Erie becoming like Detroit. We don't want Erie becoming like Buffalo. No disrespect to those cities, those are great cities. But in those poorest communities, in those poor zip codes, those people would typically seem like they're the worst people because they have lack of resources, systematic racism, systematic, just everything just seems like it's a game being played against those communities when we should be not ignored, We don't need to be put on the back burner year after year, time after time, century after century, decade. Sometimes it should stop. And Erie being such a great city that changed my life and saved my life, I am a product of Erie, being from a big city where it was worse, and I came to Erie and changed my life for the better. And I'm not just talking because I am in the community, helping the youth, dealing with the kids, trying to point them in the right direction and show them it's better than being in the streets, being a thug carrying a gun. Just imagine, we watched in the last 3 years, gun violence in the teens has risen to, I can't believe, like a major city. This is a small city. It should not have so much teen gun violence. The youth are shooting more than adults. My question is, how are they getting the guns? Where are they getting the guns from at 15 to 16-year-olds? We need to think about that. So with the UBI funding can help, at least try to help put some more money in the family's pocket to stop the violence for the youth, stop the systematic racism, stop the systematic defunding, stop the over-excessive helping the grown-ups and not helping the youth. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kathy Schaaf, 2437 East 43rd Street. Congratulations on your appointment, Susanna. You'll be getting some late-night phone calls, perhaps, and some early morning phone calls, perhaps. you'll be expected to answer emails and be present at meetings. Darnell Starnworth, thank you for giving him tribute. I met him on several occasions for coffee, and he was a great inspiration to all for fighting for peace and justice, and with all his election things that he did. I am here today to maybe piggyback on our city of Erie. There was a homelessness presentation by Channel 12 News yesterday from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, and I have been in front of you asking for restroom facilities for some time. You had approved it. I don't see any plans or anything in the making other than the downtown partnership. Perhaps we can start getting going on that. It's definitely needed. Every day I see someone urinating on my way out these doors, almost, okay? And I can tell you where, but I'm not going to. We have a city that's in flux and is in poverty. You heard them. So why are you, I would table the motion to go to $12,000. You are public servants. A public servant serves the people. I'm not saying you don't deserve a raise, because you do. $12,000 now. I watched your budget meetings. Your budget meetings were a challenge for you guys to pass the budget. Where is your money coming from? Why can't we put that on a referendum that we can vote as constituents? Yes, city council deserves a raise. Because your paper says, whereas city council desires to establish the annual compensation. What about the people that you serve? You are our elected leaders. We elected you. Yes, you deserve a raise. But what about the controller? What about the treasurer? What about the employees who haven't had a raise in a couple of years because they've been working hard too? I remember when I was on council and we did a wage freeze. So think about it, please. This is my last ditch effort. I am out in the community, went to a dance over the weekend, had a great time. People are upset, but they're not that upset to get in front of you. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Cole Shenley. I live at 615 Ohio Street, Erie, PA. I'm going to run through a couple things. I wanted to first say that I really appreciate the commendation for Darnell Stallworth. We organized together through Erie County United and the Democratic Socialists of America. He was my comrade, my friend, and I really appreciate that. I wish he could be here still to be fighting alongside us for things like universal basic income, for uplifting poverty, fixing poverty in the city, uplifting our youth and our poorest and our working class. I do want to say that I also, just really quick, I support the bike lanes on Green Garden. I think that's a great idea. We need more bike lanes. We need a more walkable, bikeable city. Really support the city in doing that. And also, actually, this is just off because of the last comment, I support the raise for city council. We need elected officials to be paid a worthy wage for the work that they do. That goes for the mayor, that goes for city council. School board should get paid, all of these offices should get paid. As somebody who has done board work in nonprofits, hey, I used to work was the board president for the co-op, for Whole Foods Co-op, Erie Co-op. We got grocery money, and not a ton of it, but it was still something. You all deserve something. You deserve to be able to have a little something extra for the work you do. This is hard work, and for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a lot, for a poorer person, it can really make or break, that extra cash. I know that people, say, well, you're a public servant, but it's more than that. You're really putting in hard work, and you deserve that extra. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Jacob Jones. I live at 1403 East 38th Street, and I'm here in my role as the Executive Director of Community Access Media. One, to kind of keep council updated on some of the things we're doing. So in honor of Black History Month, we've restarted our Local Living Legends series, where you can go on our video-on-demand service and learn about local Erie legends in the Black community and the work they've done and the legacy they've left. It's a fantastic series for anybody who'd like to watch it. We also, with a partnership with the Jefferson Educational Society, are going to begin airing their presentations and their global summits for no cost on our channels and our platforms, so the people of the city of Erie can access that content as well. So again, the Jefferson brings in world-class speakers, and we're able to actually host that content for no cost for the people of the city of Erie as well, so they can get that professional development, that education, and move forward with it. And additionally, we partnered with our public access station in Cleveland to bring together, it's a 32-part series called Fentanyl and Families and the Harm They Face. It's about how families can be affected by fentanyl and the opioid epidemic, the struggles they face and resources that exist for them, and it's actually endorsed by the National Institute of Health as well. So we're going to be starting to put that up in the next couple of weeks. So again, if people are dealing with those issues or want to learn more about it, this is an incredibly in-depth and educational platform for that. And then just on a personal note, because I didn't know this campaign existed, and I think it's really great. I am a child of poverty. I grew up in poverty in the South. When my dad moved back here, I grew up in poverty there as well. He's a disabled veteran, and so his income was very limited. And without programs that existed for social welfare, I wish a basic universal income program would have existed when I was growing up. Without those benefits, I would not be in the position I am today. Would not have gone to college, would not have furthered my career, quite frankly, wouldn't have had the family I have today because of it. So when an opportunity like this comes up where the city can get ahead of issues that if you don't get ahead of them will take decades and decades and decades to solve, this is again another amazing opportunity for the city to take a step forward. And if Erie is a world-class city, it should have world-class programs to go along with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Mary Jackson, 1940 June Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, and I'm here tonight to personally thank the President, Chuck Nelson. I know he got elected for president, but I thank God for people like him who not only looks after the homeless population, but they think about people like me, who when they get in a situation, they can't help themselves. He steps up for them, and I thank God for people like you. And I'm glad you got elected for president, and you deserve that position. And I'd also like to say tonight that for people who don't stand up, for people like me, they getting abused by not only by the police force don't stand up for them or nothing. You need to realize that God says we're supposed to be our brother's keepers, and the same thing happens to me can happen to you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Savannah Wilson. I'm 22 years young. I live on West 8th Street, apartment 22, 16501, the brokest zip code in the United States. Today I want to ask you to reflect on the conditions of the city and ask yourselves, is this the best that we can do for our people? I'm here to respectfully demand action towards our poverty crisis. 44% of our children are living in poverty, and that ain't right. Fund the Universal Basic Income Pilot for the future of our city. UBI is just the seed that you can plant to help our children flourish and grow tomorrow. But it shouldn't just stop there. Start leading with your hearts and your minds. Start listening to the people's concerns with your hearts and your ears. See the city for what it is and not for what the wealthy is telling you it is. Do y'all remember Shakur Franklin and Elijah Jackson? Do you remember those names? The justice system failed those families. I watched this whole city grieve them. It left a permanent scar on the young adults of that day, and it has never been the same ever since that. You want to reduce crime? Being open-minded is your best answer. Education is your best answer. Letting the people take control of their lives is the best answer. What I've learned in my short 22 years, challenging years, of growing up in the city is the lack of faith and role models that we don't have for our young people to look up to, along to opportunities to grow. Families can't focus on being families because they're too busy surviving. Children can't focus on being children because they're also just trying to survive. Not just poverty, but also poor education systems that beat us down instead of building students up. I was one of those students. Too many kids taking care of adults, and that ain't right. It's up to you, the decision makers, to invest into our futures financially by funding UBI and invest with resources, invest into the Erie School District and the teachers that give their whole lives working on almost poverty wages. This Saturday, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., there's going to be an educational Black History Month event at the ECAP building at the old Wayne School. We would love to see you there. Show up for the community. Show that you care. Because we're here. We're showing that we care. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Congratulations, Councilwoman Flores and Faulkner, and Ms. West of Council. I'll be brief tonight. Molly Brechtel, 820 Cranberry. Thank you so much for recognizing Darnell tonight. I think that his impact shows by the relationships that he had, whether from serving the homeless in the community to registering voters, working on neighborhood improvements. Darnell's impact on the city will last a long time. I also want to reiterate a phrase that Darnell often said: love is an action word. If we love our youth, we must invest in our youth. Does Philadelphia, Jamestown, Pittsburgh, Chicago, dozens and dozens and dozens of cities that have vested in universal basic income pilots to address child poverty love their children any more than we do here in Erie? We demand action now. Love is an action word. We demand action on our 44% child poverty rate.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to address council in public comments? Is there anyone else to address council in public comments? Is there anyone else to address council in public comments? We will move on to ordinances for final passage.
Before we do that, Mr. President, I had hoped that Mr. Keys would jump on, but he did not, so I'm declaring him absent.
Okay, thank you.
Ordinances for final passage. Council file number 16330, official file ordinance 5/2023, an ordinance establishing a compensation schedule for new Erie City Council members, repealing any inconsistent ordinances, providing for the effective date hereof. Council desires to establish the annual compensation for future City Council members 0 to 12 months, $6,000, 12 to 24 months service, $8,000, 24 to 36 months service, $10,000, 36 plus months service, $12,000. The council president shall receive an additional $2,000 per year as president. This ordinance shall be effective 20 days after its passage and approval by the mayor, the new compensation rate shall apply to city council members who are elected or re-elected to a new term of office and take such office after January 1st, 2024. Sponsored by Ms. Flores, seconded by Mr. Troop, Council File Ordinance Bill Number 16330, and now known as Official File Ordinance 5/2023, be finally passed by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council pass Official File Ordinance 5/2023 by yeas 6, nays 0. Council File Number 16331, Official Ordinance 6/2023, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $395,769 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from PennDOT. These funds will be used to carry out the City of Erie APS Intersection Safety Improvements Project through the 2022 Automated Red Light Enforcement, ARLE, funding program. This project includes the installation of 30 accessible pedestrian signal APS buttons at signal intersections that do not currently have APS but will benefit pedestrian safety. Sponsored by Mr. Troop, seconded by Ms. Flores, the Council File Bill Ordinance Number 16331, and now known as Official File Ordinance 6/2023, be finally passed by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council pass Official File Ordinance 6/2023 by yeas 6, nays 0. Council File Number 16332, Official Ordinance 7/2023, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $1,368,002 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof. This is a gun violence investigation. Sponsored by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Troop, the Council File Ordinance Number 16332, and now known as Official File Ordinance 7/2023, be finally passed by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council pass Official File Ordinance 7/2023 by yeas 6, nays 0. Moving on to ordinances for first reading. Council File Number 16333, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $5,000 from appropriated and anticipated revenue from the CSX Transportation. Sponsored by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Troop, the Council File Ordinance Number 16333, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance 16333 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. Council File Number 16334, a council of this City of Erie determining to incur lease rental debt evidenced by the guaranteed revenue note in the maximum principal amount of $3,099,600 to be authorized and issued by the Erie City Water Authority in connection with the construction, alteration, and improvements to the public water distribution facilities in and about the city, including but not limited to the lead service line replacement project, Phase 2, and paying related costs, fees, and expenses, specifying the realistic useful life of the project, authorizing and directing appropriate officers of the city to take certain actions to execute certain documents, including a guarantee agreement between the city as guarantor and the Erie City Water Authority and the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, approving the form, maximum guaranteed amounts, and sources of payment of the guarantee agreement, creating a sinking fund in connection with such guarantee obligations, and appointing a sinking fund depository, and providing for the repeal of all inconsistent ordinances or parts of ordinances. Sponsored by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Troop, The council file ordinance number 16334, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16334 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. Council file number 16335, an ordinance amending the City of Erie zoning ordinance to designate the Mayor Block 1501, 1509 State Street as historic structures pursuant to Article 7 of the City of Erie zoning ordinance and to amend the zoning map to reflect such designation. Sponsored by Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Ms. Flores, the council file ordinance number 16335, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Nelson. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16335 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. This takes us to new business, Mr. President.
Mr. President, move the bills.
Second.
Any separations?
Probably honor number one anyway, huh?
We voted.
Huh?
Oh, that's your number one.
You're not really,
Is that
you're
a
not really separating
separation?
that, are you?
No, I just
Oh, okay.
teasing you, boss.
Number one's in regards to me on a very little technicality type thing.
Any separations?
All right. Call for the vote.
Moving the balance of the agenda, Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Faulkner, Ms. Flores, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, and Mr. Nelson. I think that takes us to committee reports.
All right, well, I think we should go from left to right and put the new councilwoman on the spot. Do you have any committee reports in the last hour?
I do not. I do not have any committee reports yet, but I will in 2 weeks.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations, Ms. Faulkner. Met with downtown last week, and they were just expressing some of their concerns with the business owners and the increased amount of traffic we're seeing from people, you know, around the different businesses and stuff like that. So they were talking about some of their concerns around that. So that's something that was the biggest concern of theirs right now. That's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
No report, Mr. President.
I don't have a report. The Blighted Property Committee did have a meeting, but I was in a different meeting with the solicitor and President Nelson, so that morning I missed it last week, so I will definitely circle back and make sure that we didn't miss anything. I do know that the EMTA reached out to me to find out if we had appointed the liaison that we were supposed to, Ms. Delia, I believe is her name. Delilah, yeah. So that already occurred, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I was pretty sure, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
That was a mayoral appointment.
Okay.
Guess it's me. Again, I'd like to welcome Ms. Franklin, and I have no report for tonight. Thank you.
I had been the Water Authority liaison, so I felt like I should give some clarification for those that were reading the business of the debt they were taking on. That's a 25%. The rest of the money they're getting there is a grant. So this was a large project that they're bringing on to reduce lead in our water. They got a ton of state funding for it. and a small portion of that funding is a 30-year loan with a 1% interest rate that the city, it doesn't do anything to our debt rating or anything like that. It's just assuring receipts. So, that's probably the most confusing thing that was on the agenda today, and I probably brought that in my committee report a couple months ago, congratulating them on bringing tons of state money back to our community. So, otherwise, most of my responsibilities have been working on that whole system of bringing in a new council member. We did an orientation, did a couple-hour tour of the building on Monday, and introductions. And yeah, that's the gist of it. Can we pass it on to solicitor?
I don't have a report, but I did want to introduce everybody to Jason Check, who is in his second week as deputy solicitor, and we couldn't be happier to have him on board. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor?
I also want to welcome Susanna Faulkner to City Council here. It's great to have you. I appreciate it. I went on a tour of the Erie Cancer Wellness Center, which is relatively new. It's actually just outside the city on Pittsburgh Avenue. It's the other side of the street.
I don't know what you mean by that.
I'm sorry. But they, at this Cancer Wellness Center, they help people recover mentally from having had cancer, and there's no cost to the patients involved, and they're trying to promote that more. So I just wanted to mention it to everyone. That's a relatively new thing, and they have a lot of people who have recovered from different kinds of cancer, but who are still suffering mentally that they help. We've heard presentations in the last week or so from about 20 different local nonprofits who are looking for money for our CDBG money this year. And obviously we have requests far in excess of the amount we're going to get. We don't know the exact amount yet. That hasn't been told to us. But those sessions are coming up in early October. Well, they'll be presenting. Finally, I just wanted to mention, I went over to the Soldiers and Sailors Home back on February 3rd. They had a ceremony honoring 4 chaplains from the Army who were killed during World War II. They were all in the same boat with, I think, about 500 or 600 soldiers going over. And it was pretty moving the way they explained what these chaplains did. They basically, they had life jackets. They gave them to some of the, a lot of them didn't have life jackets because that part was underwater already. They gave their life jackets away, and they all, I'd never heard that story before, but it was very moving, and I just wanted to share that as well. Thanks a lot.
I probably should put all that CDBG stuff in my report too. I spent a couple hours there with. All right. With that, we adjourn the meeting.